Do you really own your home?
I thought, well, I put all this money into this house with Jackie. We brought 2 kids up.
Thousands of UK homeowners have entered into a scheme to protect against care home fees and inheritance tax without realising they have placed ownership of their property into a trust.
Because we've never seen anything on this trust.
Many of these people will not realise they have a problem until they try and sell their home, and sometimes it's their children who deal with the consequences.
My lads would have lost quite a lot of money.
Beneficiaries may have inherited their parents' property without realising it is tied up in a scheme and owned by a trust.
It's a scam, Dad. I said, it can't be. They were so professional.
Universal Wealth sold the scheme as a way of protecting your assets from care home fees and inheritance tax. Many people who signed up to the scheme are now unaware that their home is technically owned by a trust, which may come with some costly financial implications. Kate Saunders from IDR Law explains more.
Universal Wealth was a company that offered services to clients in terms of their asset planning. So they offered preparations of wills, lasting powers of attorneys, and also trust assets to save on inheritance tax. They used to send out literature and brochures to prospective clients, advertising their Keep It in the Family seminars. These seminars, they offered advice around estate planning, but were also selling asset preservation trusts.
Roger Wade attended one of these seminars after receiving a leaflet through his door.
I heard about Universal Wealth and their services through a flyer that came through my front door. And they said that they were going to have a seminar at the Doubletree Hotel in Sheffield to discuss the making of wills and powers of attorney.
In addition to the making of wills and lasting powers of attorney, attendees were encouraged to enter into a trust scheme to safeguard their assets and future family wealth.
The idea of the trust, as they sold it, was to save on inheritance tax and care home fees and keep the wealth in your family.
I learnt about the, how can we call it, the scheme whereby I could use my house in trust to prevent me having to pay health charges if either Jackie or I were due to go into a nursing home. But I didn't learn about that till I got to the seminar. I can't remember that being on the piece of paper.
For most people that attended these seminars, their main asset was the property. And in protecting their assets, they would choose to put their property into trust. Universal Wealth would ordinarily be appointed as the trustees. This would mean that they would be named as the owners of these properties. And the consequence of that was that they ultimately didn't then have free rein on their property. So, for example, if they wanted to sell their property in the future, they would have to ask the consent of the trustees before they could do that.
The leaflets advertising the seminars focused on the preparation of wills and lasting powers of attorney. The main topic discussed at the seminars, however, seemed to be the asset preservation trusts that protected against care home fees.
The discussions and presentation at this seminar, there was more time spent on the protection of your assets against paying out on death duties than there was on wills and powers of attorney.
Thousands of people at seminars signed up to these trusts to protect their assets.
There must have been between 150 and 200 people there. And I looked round and I thought, well, there aren't many young people here. And they were all in, well, perhaps not my age, not 80s, but over 60s.
Did you or your parents attend one of these Universal Wealth seminars? Perhaps you have signed up to a scheme to protect your assets. If this sounds familiar, you may find that your family home is legally owned by someone else.
We sat and listened to the short statement on wills and powers of attorney, and then he raised this issue about protection of your having to pay health charges. And I suspect a lot of people took it on.
The apparent benefits were outlined clearly. However, the people attending these events were not made aware of the tax implications of signing their homes into a trust.
They told you about the benefits, but they never said anything about having to pay corporation tax or whatever it is if you got rid of your house or anything like that. Never mentioned that.
The people running the seminar claimed to be experts in trusts and wealth planning. They looked the part, and sounded convincing, so many of the attendees trusted the company and signed up to the scheme.
They all said, well, we were practising solicitors, or we are practising solicitors, all well-attired, good suit. I can tell a good suit from a bad suit.
Roger and his wife signed up to both the will and power of attorney and also the Asset Preservation Trust scheme.
They said, if anybody wishes to take it up, come and see us after this meeting. And I was, yes, we need a will, and yes, we need powers of attorney. And the other sounded so good that we took that on as well.
Once Roger and Jackie had signed up to the scheme, communication with them became harder.
They were based in Ipswich, and it's difficult dealing with somebody that's so far away. But the only time we saw them was when they wanted something signing.
Roger became suspicious when he received a letter from another solicitor asking to sign up to a new standing order.
I got a letter from Cohen and Knight telling me that Universal Trust had handed over my trust to them to continue monitoring. And would I like to sign a standing order for their fees to monitor this trust? And that's when I smelt a rat.
The directors at Universal Wealth were facing prosecution for contempt of court because they would not reveal the whereabouts of £25 million of clients' funds, although they didn't seem to make this clear in the letter.
They didn't actually say that Universal Trust had been prosecuted. They said that they were losing staff and they couldn't control the situation, so they passed it over to Cohen and Knights.
After speaking to their family, they began to realise the scheme was not what it seemed.
They said, it's a scam, Dad. I said, it can't be. They were so professional. And, of course, it turned out to be a scam because Jackie says, well, we better go and get some advice.
Annie Wright, a solicitor at Wake Smith, has seen a number of clients facing similar issues with the Universal Wealth scheme.
Clients started approaching me about their Universal Wealth trusts when there were news items about Universal Wealth Preservation and its owners being investigated for missing funds.
Annie's clients wanted to find out more about the implications of the trust and what steps they could take to restore them as the legal owners of their property.
They contacted me to review the trust arrangements, to give them advice about the consequences of those trusts and their options, and also to remove Universal Wealth as trustees so that they were no longer in control of those trusts.
She got the paperwork from Cohen and Knights. She said, your will seems sound. Your powers of attorney, there's not a lot wrong with it. But the other one, she just said, it will not work, what they promised me.
When I started looking at the paperwork, it was apparent that the structure of the trusts was very unusual and how the paperwork had been drafted was very unusual. The way these particular trusts had been drafted caused a huge tax problem in that when their houses would be sold in the future, there would be a large capital gains tax bill as a result of the structure of the trusts.
Because I had signed this, and Jackie had signed this trust, the government were going to take a third off what I was going to leave my lads.
It therefore became apparent that this wasn't simply a case of advising about the consequences. We needed to look at getting the trusts set aside by the court so that they would be treated as if they had never existed. And that's where I approached Kate Saunders at IDR for assistance to deal with that.
And I said, well, I'd like you to refer me to IDR Law.
Here at IDR Law, we have helped a number of clients have their assets removed from the Universal Wealth trusts. Clients who find themselves in this situation are often shocked, as Kate Saunders explains.
The clients that we've assisted, they had no idea whatsoever. So to be in that situation where, first of all, they get told that we'll get informed that Universal Wealth are no longer operating and you need to do something about the trusteeship, what do we do? And then secondly, actually, the trust mechanism you've got in place doesn't have the effect you intended. It's quite a shock.
The capital gains tax bill resulting from the setup of the trust can be a substantial portion of their assets.
If you're looking at an average price of a property, that's a lot of capital gains tax that you potentially pay if you ever sold the property in the future. So our clients were extremely grateful to have been informed that that's the case and to get the opportunity to do something about it.
At IDR Law, we are able to help clients who may have placed their property in a trust by working to have it set aside on the basis that the capital gains tax bill was not a known consequence.
When Universal Wealth create these trusts, they make an application to the Land Registry to have the property taken out of the names of the clients and placed into the names of the trustees. For some clients, we don't need to do much, but with other clients where it's more complicated and where a charge was used, a court application may be required. The purpose of that court application is to have that legal charge set aside. And the charge will be set aside on the basis that a mistake was made. So at the time that legal advice was given, the clients didn't understand that there was a tax consequence and that if they ever sold their property in the future, that capital gains tax would be payable. The courts view that as a mistake about the law, and they look to correct the position on the basis that it would be unfair for the clients for that charge to remain in place. At IDR Law, we've had success in 2 cases which have proceeded to the Royal Courts of Justice, where the legal charges that were created have been set aside on the basis that there was a capital gains tax mistake and that would have adverse consequences for the clients if it remained in place.
Kate has managed to have the Universal Wealth Trust set aside for all the clients that I have referred to her. So the first client that she dealt with had substantial evidence of the advice that they were given at the time, which supported the application to have the trust set aside. My subsequent client didn't have so much evidence, but Kate still managed to get that trust set aside also.
And when she said, well, I find in your favour, the bottle came out.
Suffolk Police have led the investigations against Universal Wealth and work continues. As part of their investigations, their force confiscated all of the files belonging to Universal Wealth clients and are currently working to return all paperwork to each client. Due to the sheer number of client files, this will take time. Although there were press articles released about Universal Wealth at the time their firm ceased trading, not all former clients are aware of the potential issues with these trusts that have been uncovered. If you think you have been affected, please contact IDR Law for help in reviewing your trusts.